It can be empowering to give yourself a bit more agency in the dream and to feel like you're not just a helpless victim of some sort of recurring nightmare. You actually have the power to decide what to do in a dream and to change the way you react.
Hello, and welcome to the Sleep Science Podcast. I'm Penny Lewis, a sleep scientist and the presenter of this show. In this program, we talk about all things related to sleep, from dreaming and sleepwalking to what sleep does for the brain and the body, and how we can get more out of our sleep. In this episode, we'll be talking about dreams in general, and more specifically, about lucid dreams. Michelle Carr of Rochester University and Karen Konkoly of Northwestern University will guide us through the topic as we define what lucid dreams are, think about when they occur during the night, and discuss ways to train yourself to have lucid dreams. We'll also talk about how dreams can provide a window on the mind, the concept of dreams as metaphors, how dreams might be able to help with some types of anxiety, and the future potential of this field for young researchers. I found this a really fascinating and fruitful topic, and my guests are two remarkable, imaginative, and daring young scientists. I hope you'll enjoy our conversation. I first came across these characters when Karen was briefly working in my lab doing an internship before she did her PhD. And she kept kind of disappearing off down the coast to Mark Blagrove's lab in Swansea, where they work on dreams. And occasionally, this friend of hers from that lab with blue hair would appear in our lab meetings. And it wasn't really until much later, maybe a year or two later, that I really realized what interesting stuff she'd been sneaking off to do down in Swansea. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. These girls were working on some really interesting work on lucid dreaming, and they've had some amazing results out of that. And so I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about it. Maybe I could start by just asking you, what is lucid dreaming?
So there's a variety of definitions of lucid dreaming, but the most basic one is just you know that you're dreaming and you're still asleep. So a lot of people think that's the minimum criteria, and then there's kind of a spectrum of how much you can control the dream or how aware you really are of what it means to be dreaming.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just becoming aware of the fact that you're dreaming while you're still asleep.
And why is it, do you think, that people are so interested in this? What's the draw? Because I know that a lot of people are interested in learning to get lucid in their dreams and in using it for various purposes.
First of all, they can be super fun. I mean, you can go flying in your dreams, or you can practice things that you aren't able to do in waking life. So you can have fun. I think that's like the first reason people get into it. It's just curiosity and wanting to enjoy themselves. But then you can also use it for much more meaningful and transformative experiences as well.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people who are curious about the nature of reality and what's really around you, like when you touch things and you're awake, they seem so solid and so real. But then if you think about physics or whatever, they're actually totally not that solid. They're like mostly air, and the things that you're experiencing, you know, we hear about how they're not as real as we think, but to have direct experience of that is a lot harder. And I think in a lucid dream, you can have a direct experience of that. You know that everything around you is created in your brain, and yet you can touch things and things seem solid, and there's all these unexpected things that could happen to you, and you know that they're not existing in physical reality, and yet they seem sometimes just as real as physical reality. And so I think that that can intrigue people.
That's a really insightful experience to realize how incredibly powerful your mind is and how convincing your mind can be about the reality around you. Like you can touch and taste and see and feel everything around you, and yet know that everything is being generated by your mind.
It's a pretty incredible idea. I mean, definitely for me, the idea that I could be lucid and control what's happening in my dreams and maybe do whatever I want is quite attractive. Although I have to say that personally, it's never happened. I think the most lucid I've ever been is maybe if I was having a really scary nightmare, realizing that it's a dream and kind of waking up.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Yeah, but not controlling any other aspect. So I can see why people are attracted by this, and I can definitely see why you guys were interested. What are some of the most common techniques that people actually use to get lucid or to work on being able to become lucid?
Well, there's a few different categories of techniques. There's cognitive techniques. So those are ones that you do. For instance, before you go to bed, you can set a strong intention that the next time you're dreaming, you're going to realize it and become lucid. And you can also rehearse a previous dream that you had and kind of imagine those critical moments at which something strange happened and you should have realized you were dreaming. And you can kind of rehearse in your head the act of becoming lucid before you go to sleep. And that helps some people become lucid.
Yeah, that's kind of setting the intention to become lucid. And then there's also, during the day, you can do a technique called reality checking or reality testing, which is where a handful of times across the day, you just remind yourself to ask the question whether or not you're dreaming. So you ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? And you really observe what you're experiencing and what your environment is like, and really ask yourself the question. Because if you do that in a dream, likely something unusual will happen and you can get clued into the fact that you're dreaming. So it's kind of a training technique to start to question whether you're awake or dreaming so that you do it while you're asleep as well.
And some people like the little tests, like trying to do something that's impossible when you're awake, like sticking your finger through your hand or trying to plug your nose while you're breathing. And if you can do those things, then that's proof that you're dreaming, if they work, actually.
So. Yeah, they work. In a dream, even if you do those things, your finger will go right through your hand. But because you're dreaming, you'll just be like, oh, well, that's weird that happened, but I'm still awake. Confabulation happens a lot in dreaming.
Yeah, I think we have some skepticism about how well those really work because of that confabulation, or because sometimes they don't work in dreams. Like sometimes you'll plug your nose and you can't breathe in a dream.
Right.
Nevertheless, they work for some people. And I actually had one work for me a few weeks ago. I did not know I was dreaming, going along my merry way, and I plugged my nose and I could totally breathe. And I was like, wow, I was dreaming after all. So
yeah, they work sometimes.
Yeah.
This sounds a bit dangerous. It sounds like you might start trying some of those things when you're awake.
You should do safe things.
Yeah, that is definitely a growing thing that people are starting to think more about, is like, is it really good to be doing this all the time? Because obviously if you question reality too much and really think that you're dreaming when you're awake, then it's like Leonardo DiCaprio's wife in Inception, where she didn't believe that reality was real anymore. And so I think some lucid dreamers would say that it doesn't have that effect, because when you do the reality checks when you're awake, they don't work. So if you can fly and you're awake, you have other problems besides just needing to learn how to lucid dream. I mean, I guess if you're unstable or something, then maybe reality checking is not good for you.
What kind of success rate would you say that the reality checking has in helping people to actually get lucid?
That's hard to say, because the research on it varies so much in how much people do the technique and for how long they do the techniques. In some studies, you might be told to practice these techniques maybe 10 times a day for a month or something. And I don't know what percentage become lucid, Karen, do you know?
I don't know. I feel like reality checking is usually used in conjunction with other techniques. And so it's kind of all together. I don't think that reality checking alone without doing any other techniques has a super good success rate. Like it might give you a few lucid dreams, but it's not really reliable. But I think that one of the most reliable ones is probably wake back to bed. That's where you wake up 5 or 6 hours after you fall asleep, stay awake for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and then you fall back asleep. And in that period of time, when you're falling back asleep, that causes, I think, a lot more people to have lucid dreams.
Yeah, it seems like you really need two factors. You need a certain type or quality of sleep. So maybe a sleep that's more aroused, a late morning sleep, a REM sleep. And you also need kind of that cognitive intention or that memory to practice reality check. You need both of those things. Both of those together seem to work the best.
Okay. And you mentioned that people use the reality check in conjunction with other techniques. So what other techniques could they have to help?
Well, one I mentioned was the techniques as you're going to sleep, like intention setting and rehearsing your last dream. You can also use pharmacological techniques. So there's drugs that increase your amount of acetylcholine, like galantamine, and that can increase people's dream vividness and their level of lucid dreaming.
Yeah, also with reality checks, you can kind of cater it to be more specific to your own dream themes. You can start to learn what your dream signs are. So, for example, if I frequently have dreams of flying, that's a dream sign for me because that's something that I should start to train myself that every time I'm flying, I'm probably dreaming.
Right.
Uh,
Or your dream signs can be things that happen in your dreams, but also could happen when you're awake. Like if you frequently dream of certain people, then every time you see those people when you're awake, you do a reality check in hopes that also when you dream about them, you do a reality check. The final category of lucid dream induction techniques is external stimulation. So some people buy masks that flash lights when you enter REM sleep to hope that that could be a more predictable dream sign. If you say, well, I know that this light means that I'm dreaming.
Okay, so now this is something we didn't touch on yet. So it's true that lucid dreaming only happens in REM sleep. Is that right? And REM sleep, of course, is kind of the later night sleep stage that is associated with emotional and fragmented and kind of crazy dreams.
it does happen in other stages of sleep, but it just is much more common in REM sleep, it's much easier to induce lucid dreams in REM sleep for sure.
Do you have
But
ideas about why that might be?
Well, I think that part of it is that your cognition in REM sleep is closer to that of when you're awake, perhaps. So being lucid in deep sleep wouldn't be as meaningful if your dream content wasn't as vivid. But I think also people have lucid dreams in stage one sleep or even on the borders as they're waking up. I think there's kind of two schools of thought. And one is that you have lucid dreams in between wake and sleep. And another one is that you have lucid dreams in the most vivid part of REM sleep.
yeah, and there are some people that say you can have lucid dreamless sleep as well, which might even be in stage 3. I think it's just much less studied. But I think at home, I think those spontaneous lucid dreams that people have, they're usually very, very vivid dreams. So dreams in REM sleep are more vivid, they're more immersive, there's much more sensory experience, more emotional, and all of these things seem common in lucid dreaming as well. So it seems like having a really vivid, immersive dream means you're more likely to become lucid.
So that's really interesting. I hadn't realized that lucid dreaming could happen in non-REM stages. And thinking about what you've just said, Karen, you said one school of thought is that it happens kind of when you're in the border between wake and sleep. And another school of thought is that it happens when you're at the deepest stages of REM. So can I just ask, do you know about the time of night when you tend to have these lucid dreams? Does it tend to be in the morning, soon before you wake up, if it's in REM? Or does it tend to be in the earlier stages of REM? You mentioned earlier that once people have woken up once and then they're going back to sleep, or they go back to sleep, they're more likely to get lucid at that point. So that would suggest it's a later night kind of thing.
Yes, lucid dreams are much more common in the late night or early morning. And I think that that kind of fits in with both ideas about how you become lucid, because in both of those times, you're in a lighter stage of sleep in that you're not having as many slow waves. And there are some studies that the less slow waves that you have in the front, the more lucid dreams you have. And so they become less and less throughout the night. And so in the morning, your REM has less slow waves. And also you're waking up more and you have more acetylcholine and all that stuff.
So this is kind of the idea that the more slow waves you have, the less conscious you are, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you started to talk about devices that people could wear that would alert them or wake them up or somehow let them know when they're in REM sleep. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so these masks have been around, I think, since the 90s. They're like sleep masks that you can wear, and the early versions aren't necessarily detecting sleep stages. They might be on like a timer. So if you know that maybe after 6-ish hours of sleep, you might be more likely to be in a REM period, then this mask, it has these little LED lights in front of your eyes, and it might just flash these LED lights at certain intervals when you expect to be in REM sleep. And you kind of just train yourself to try to recognize when these lights are coming into your dreams so that you can become lucid. And they might just appear like your whole dream just flashes with red lights, or it might be like something specific in the dream, like a lamp off to your side flashes red, or your phone flashes red or something like that. And you just try to train yourself to recognize that. More recently, the masks have electrodes in them and they really try to detect sleep stages so that they can cue you when you're in REM sleep. But they haven't really been tested in sleep labs yet, so it's not clear how accurate they are. And you can also use sounds, you could use vibration, any type of sensory stimulation. You could try to trigger that when you're in REM sleep and use that as a cue to become lucid.
I mean, it's interesting to me on several levels. One level is just, there's been this long-standing kind of myth, really, that people aren't aware of sensory stimulation when they're deeply asleep. And we know that's wrong, partly because of what you've just described, that if you flash lights at people, they can become aware of that. And also because of some of the studies with auditory stimulation in sleep, where people seem to be able to process and be aware of auditory stimulation that's happening. But it's so interesting that as early as the 90s, people were already using this and kind of flouting that myth about not being aware of stimulation. So it's interesting to me in that way, but also this is really interesting because what you're saying is that once people become aware they're in REM, then they can use that information, even though they're asleep, to somehow become lucid. So how do you think that works?
Well, I think that a lot of the traditional lucid dreaming induction techniques relied on the idea of prospective memory, where you have to remember that you're going to remember to do something in the future. And so a lot of the initial studies with stimulation were like, you're going to remember the red light means that you're dreaming. And so more recently, the study that I snuck off to Swansea to help Michelle with really amplified this connection. So before people were sleeping, every time there was a stimulation, we gave them this prompt and this instruction to really become aware of their body and become mindful and become lucid while they were awake. And then we cued them during REM sleep in the lab, and half of the people had lucid dreams from that. So that we thought was a little bit less like prospective memory and a little bit more like conditioning a mindset and then reactivating that mindset during REM sleep.
Mm-hmm. Can you just talk a little bit more about what you guys actually did in that study? So you said it now, but you said it really fast. So I think you trained people during wake, didn't you, to kind of react to these type of light cues?
Yeah, so just kind of reiterate a bit what Karen was saying. Already there's this idea that you're getting a cue. So say in our study, we used a red flashing light, and we also used a beeping sound that was like beep, beep, beep. And so already there's the idea of prospective memory. We're telling participants, we're going to play these while you're asleep, and you're going to remember that these are cues to become lucid. But beyond that, we actually had them lie in the bed for 20 minutes before they went to sleep. And we played this flashing light and this beeping sound at 1-minute intervals for 20 minutes. And every time we played one of those cues, we were instructing them again, when you notice this cue, you're going to become lucid. And when we described this term lucidity, we talked about it as like becoming aware, becoming present, becoming mindful. I mean, people are very familiar with the term mindfulness now, and that is similar to lucidity in some sense. It's just becoming aware of your current experience. So we played these cues at 1-minute intervals, and we told them every time you notice this cue, just become aware, become mindful, become present. And we're essentially creating an association between the sensory cue and this state of lucidity. So it's really becoming like a habit for them. Every time I notice this cue, I'm going to become lucid. So then once they fall asleep, we can represent these cues in REM sleep and again, hope to trigger this associated mind state of lucidity.
And were these people who were practiced lucid dreamers, they know how to do this already, or was this brand new to them?
We didn't have any criteria when we were recruiting participants about whether they had lucid dreams or not.
Yeah, some of our participants had never before had a lucid dream. Some of them had them at a weekly level. We had the whole range. We did this kind of intentionally. Most lucid dreaming studies, they really just recruit experienced lucid dreamers because you're more likely that they're going to have a lucid dream in the lab. But we wanted to really see if this protocol worked in anyone, in people who had no experience before. So we recruited everyone.
And it's really remarkable that it did work. What kind of percentage of your recruits then had lucid dreams in the lab?
It was a nice 50%. So when we say we had 50% induction, these are 50% of our participants who had what we call signal verified lucid dreams. So there's another step to sleep lab lucid dreaming studies, which is that we tell people if they do become lucid to look left and right with their eyes 3 times very quickly. And Karen and I in the sleep lab could see that on the EOG trace. And that's kind of an objective verification of the fact they're in a dream and they know that they're dreaming. So it's called signal verified lucid dreams.
So you could see that because you had electrodes on their eye muscles and you could tell which way they were looking. So when they looked left and right, you had a kind of a trace that you could pick up from outside of the bedroom, right? And that you were recording.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it stands out a lot over other REM eye movements because they're way bigger eye movements and more evenly spaced. And so usually it's easy to tell this is a signal. It's not a regular eye movement. It's also a reason maybe why there's less documented lucid dreams in other stages of sleep, because you don't necessarily have control of your eye movements in other stages of sleep.
Right. So it's hard to get signal verified lucid dreams in other stages of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Although I wonder whether the characteristics of dreams in other stages of sleep lend themselves to lucidity. I mean, I really don't know. People talk about non-REM dreams as being much more mundane, everyday, correct grammar, black and white, whereas REM dreams are emotional, bizarre, kind of crazy, mixed up, fun dreams, right? So I guess it depends whether people's lucid dreams tend to fit into one or the other of those categories.
They tend to be more REM-like lucid dreams, but there's definitely reports of lucid dreamless sleep. So being lucid and you're asleep, but there's no dream content whatsoever. And I think Stephen LaBerge also has some signal verified lucid dreams occurring from non-REM sleep, non-REM stage 2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen, but it's less common for sure.
Did you ask your participants what they were dreaming about?
Oh, yes.
We actually didn't count it as a lucid dream unless they gave the signal and they said that they were in a lucid dream. And so many of them had different ways that the stimuli were incorporated. One was in a grocery store and she heard her phone beeping. Another was on the beach and she saw the sun flashing. And then there was at least one participant who did not become lucid, but still gave the eye signal. She was in her kitchen and I think the lights were flashing and she just felt like she had to give this eye movement, but she totally thought she was awake. She didn't know she was dreaming at all.
But you didn't have any really bizarre, crazy kind of people being chased by monsters and teleported to Mars or anything, dreams?
I think somebody had a Yeti.
Did we? Yeah, I can't remember.
I don't know. Dreams in this study weren't as crazy as other lucid dreams have necessarily been reported. Many of them were simple. We have some ideas about why that might be, but we kind of thought it was interesting.
Did you give them much time to evolve before you woke them up? Or did you kind of let them dream for a bit and then wake them up and ask them what they were dreaming?
Yeah, that's definitely a big reason. They were only in REM sleep for a short period of time. We cued them right away after it started. So it also could be that, yeah, their dreams just didn't have enough time to evolve.
Well, it's really interesting and it's really cool that you've developed this method for helping people to get lucid. I guess the next question is, what can we do with this? I mean, do you think this could be useful for something other than just people having a really good time while they're lucid?
The main clinical application of lucid dreaming so far has been really focused on people with nightmares. Actually, you kind of touched on it earlier, the fact that sometimes when you're having a really bad nightmare, you might become a little bit lucid and you can wake yourself up and get out of it. But if you could potentially go through something like a lucid dreaming training where you start to learn how to become lucid when you're experiencing a nightmare and how you can use that to maybe change your reactions to the nightmare. So instead of running away from a scary monster, you can confront the monster. It can be empowering to give yourself a bit more agency in the dream and to feel like you're not just a helpless victim of some sort of recurring nightmare. You actually have the power to decide what to do in a dream and to change the way you react. So that's one of the major applications of lucid dreaming so far clinically.
That's a really important application. Have people looked at how that might influence people's anxiety levels or depression or PTSD or other things that are associated with lots of recurrent nightmares?
It has been applied in PTSD, so for treating post-traumatic nightmares or recurrent nightmares. I can't think of empirical studies in anxiety or depression generally, but there are more general studies looking at how lucid dreaming can be associated with positive mood. So I don't think it's been developed as a therapy in those directions, but I think it has possibilities.
I really liked what you said about empowerment. So instead of feeling like a passive victim of these nightmares, people might be able to turn things around and control what happens next. And I can really imagine that that could help people with these kinds of conditions. I suppose it just depends whether nightmares are part of their problem or not.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also another category of things you could use lucid dreaming for in terms of studying consciousness in the laboratory. So you can kind of use it as a model to see how your experiences might be different when you're awake to when you're in a dream. One famous example is with smooth tracking, which is following an object with your eyes smoothly. When you're awake, you can only do that if there's a real object. And if you close your eyes and try to imagine it, you can't do it anymore. And your eyes move from one point to another with saccades, which is like a straight eye movement. But then they got lucid dreamers to follow their finger in a circle. And they found that in a dream, you were able to smoothly track an object. So that was a demonstration that what you're experiencing in a dream is a little bit like perception in that way rather than like your imagination.
So this is people who are dreaming of a finger moving and they're tracking that finger that they're dreaming of. No one is really moving any finger.
Right, exactly.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a bunch of other experiments you can do like that about what you can access in a dream. Like, can you walk into a room that you weren't in real life and is everything there or is it different? Or one that we haven't done yet but are thinking of is, can you get entrained to a stimuli that's only in your dream? Like if you walk in front of a strobe light in a dream, are you going to get your brainwaves entrained to that strobe light the same way that they would be when you're awake?
Yeah, that's essentially like, can you learn new things in a dream?
We have some related data where we've been just presenting tones to people, tones that have been paired with something they learned in the day. And then some of the tones haven't been paired with anything. And when we do this in slow wave sleep, so that's kind of deep non-REM sleep, we don't get any difference in the response of the brain to these meaningful tones and the not meaningful tones. But when we do it in REM sleep, we get a big difference between them. They actually respond more to the not meaningful tones.
Oh.
And and we think this might be because it's a kind of a novelty thing. It's like, what's that? This is something new that I haven't heard before. Whereas the thing that's familiar is just like, okay, this is not a threat. You know, it does indicate some deeper level of processing in REM because they could tell the difference between something that's associated with a memory and something that's not. But how deep that goes, we don't know.
That reminds me of one case in our study. So we actually had another group of participants who went through the whole training period, but then we didn't present the cues during sleep. We just wanted to see if they would become lucid or not on their own. But for one participant, I accidentally hit my knee on the desk and she became lucid. And I think she heard my knee hitting the desk and she was like, oh, I should become lucid.
That would make sense because people definitely process threats when they're asleep, and it makes sense for them to do that. Similarly, mothers process their babies crying or whatever. They're going to be alerted by that. And so if there's an unexpected sound, people are much more likely to arouse a bit. And it sounds like getting lucid is a form of arousal.
That would be interesting to actually test whether people become even more lucid with unexpected stimuli.
Yeah.
There you go. That can be your next
study.
Yeah. Well, it just seems like there's a huge amount of potential in this research. So it's really exciting. I wanted to ask you guys some quick questions now. I already asked you about devices for dream research. Are there any other kinds of devices you want to mention beyond the ones with the light?
For dream research, not so much. For sleep research, there's other types of EEG headbands that are consumer products now.
But nothing particularly important for dream research.
On the market, there's a bunch of different varieties of the light headbands, and then other people are kind of developing stuff, but I don't know of any other ones.
The good old dream journal is your number one best friend, just practicing recalling your dreams.
And I'm curious, are people using data mining techniques like text mining to analyze some of those dream journals, or is it still done pretty much by hand?
Text mining is definitely being used now. It used to be just content analysis, which is done kind of by hand looking for specific themes in dreams. But now there's some online databases where people all over the world have uploaded their dreams. There's just hundreds of thousands of dreams uploaded into databases that can be analyzed through text mining to look for themes. Or you could compare maybe what sorts of word categories get pulled out in lucid versus non-lucid dreams. So I think that's becoming more common.
So people are doing it now, but there's nothing published yet, or are there actual articles on this?
Kelly Bulkley's done some text mining of his database in the past year or so using linguistic inventory and word count system. So he's used that to study dreams in online databases.
I can imagine it's probably quite a rich source of information, but people have to just find the right ways to study them. That kind of brings me to another question, which is we've focused on lucid dreaming till now, but of course, people have studied dreams in lots of other ways in the past. And I'm just curious, particularly Michelle, are you working on other aspects of dreams?
Yeah, I've got a few different things going on. One of the new projects I'm working on is just looking at sleep and dreaming in the deaf community. So it's particularly people who are deaf who haven't used speech as a communication in their life. How does that impact the way they communicate in dreams? How does that impact the visual content of dreams versus there might be no auditory content of dreams? That's a really new area of research. I don't think there's really any research studies on sleep or dreams in the deaf yet.
Is your expectation that people who are congenitally deaf won't have sounds in their dreams?
I think that, yeah, that would probably be part of it. But I guess I'm interested in what other aspects of the dream might be enhanced. It's kind of, as somebody who's been speaking and hearing my whole life, the way that I think and daydream and dream, a lot of it is just me talking to myself. And people who are deaf don't do that, right? They don't talk to themselves. They just see signs or they see visual information or concepts, but there's no inner speech. So that's a really different inner world. So I'm just curious to talk with them. Well, not talk with them, but communicate with them and learn more about what their inner world is like.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you're using the dreams as a window onto their inner world and trying to see how their inner world might be different from ours. That's really cool. I mean, this kind of feeds, in a sense, into this idea of dreams as metaphors. Is that something that you guys buy into? Do you think dreams are metaphorical or that can be useful somehow?
I think that some dreams are metaphorical, and there's probably metaphorical elements in dreams. I think that kind of poses a challenge for dream research, because if you want to see if your stimuli got incorporated into a dream or influenced the dream, or if an event from the day influenced the dream, it's hard to say whether it did or not, because it might have been done metaphorically. And so I think that for memory research, it's a big challenge, but for personal insight, it's a really interesting area.
So you do think that metaphorical dreams can kind of give you insight into your own psyche?
Well, I think that it's kind of common, the types of metaphorical dreams that people have, like their teeth falling out or they're in a car that they're losing control over. Rarely does that happen because somebody just got in a car crash. It often happens, these types of dreams that seem symbolic because there's something else in their life that they're representing. I don't think you can say for somebody else what their dream is a metaphor of, but I think that they do exist.
There are certain very common, typical dream themes that people, even across cultures, will experience. And when you look at that theme on the surface, it's not like this is something that's happening to them every day. It seems to be metaphorical for some other felt or emotional quality in their life. It can be positive or negative. So Karen said the car out of control dream, that's very common. And that's not something you really experience very often in waking life. But then a positive one, which is common, is finding a secret room in your house. That has never happened to me, but I've had that dream. It's just this sudden sense of awe and wonder that you have this whole other area of your house to explore. It's usually kind of an amazing, secret, creative, mystical area of the house. And that's kind of a universal dream theme, which is quite striking. It seems to be metaphorical for discovering a new aspect of yourself or of your life. So I think, yeah, we can have metaphorical dream themes.
I think it's interesting to speculate about the brain bases of those too, because when you're awake, your input is all from the outside and you're making sense of it. But when you're in a dream, your input is from the inside, like maybe it's from your pons or something. And so you're getting this activation and then you have to make sense of it. And so I think maybe it's kind of natural that, as you go up your brain and you try to say, does this make sense? Does this make sense? You're going to get to those themes that speak something on multiple levels.
Yeah, you're creating a dream world to make sense of what you're experiencing. So it's kind of the reverse of what you do in waking life.
So somehow it can be useful, maybe if it allows us to make sense of what our brains are doing, what's going on inside.
Yeah.
We hope so. As dream researchers.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you're awake, your subconscious is like really below your conscious, and you have senses or vague ideas, but really only see it in the way that it comes out and influences your consciousness. And when you're in a dream, you're getting this more perceptual, experiential experience of maybe some part of your subconscious. So I think that like paying a little bit more attention to that, you can find things out about yourself probably.
So I have to ask you now, both of you, can you tell me about some crazy metaphorical dream that you've had that was important to you in some way?
Michelle's are the best. You go first. Do the mirror one.
Oh, the woman in the mirror?
I like that one.
Yeah, well, I didn't necessarily have an insight into what it meant in my waking life, but I was looking into a mirror and my reflection was looking back at me, but I quickly realized that something was off about this dream because it looked like me, but it looked like a younger version of me. And this woman was wearing a white, tattered wedding dress and her face was kind of blurring as I was looking at her. It was kind of creepy. But in waking life, I did some dream work with a group of people around this dream. And through doing the dream work, started to realize that I really needed to connect with this younger version of myself that had experienced lost love and just felt very alone. And through doing the dream work, I actually had another step in the dream come where I was able to go into the mirror and like merge with it. Sometimes in dream work, it's called dreaming the dream forward. So you continue the dream to a new resolution. And that new resolution just allowed me to feel more connected with a younger version of myself that was feeling very lost and alone. So that was pretty moving.
When you say dream work, that merge with that version of yourself in the mirror, did that happen in wake or in sleep?
By dream work, I mean the waking dream discussion. So you can do this with one other person or with a group of people. We call it dream work because you're working with the content of the dream. So this is all done in wakefulness. You take a dream, and if it's a bad dream or it ended badly, you try to reimagine a way that it could end more positively. And through waking imagination, rehearse this new type of imagery. And that's another treatment for nightmares. Working with dreams in your waking life.
It sounds incredibly powerful. Okay, Karen, how about you? Do you have a dream?
Well, let's see. I have a funny one that I just found, and it was a dream about taping up my friend's face and his mouth. And he was being really nice about it, but it was clearly very uncomfortable. And during wake, this friend talked way too much, and I got so annoyed at how he is talking so much. And then in my dream, I was covering his face with tape so that he couldn't talk. So I think that was like a pretty clear metaphor.
That's definitely a pretty clear metaphor. I like that. A few months ago, I dreamt that I had been elected prime minister. And I didn't know that I had even been running for prime minister. It wasn't something that I was aware of. I had to give a speech. Like I was on stage and I had to give the inaugural speech to the whole country. And they were just shoving this microphone in my face. And I was like, I have no idea what to say. I don't want to be here, but I can't say that. I don't know what that was a metaphor for. Probably some conference where I had to give a talk.
Interesting. Do you think dreams can be metaphorical?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say from my experience, they can be highly metaphorical. And I shy away from any hardcore interpretation of how to use that or what it means.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're random. Okay, so this has been amazing. Thank you, guys. I want to ask you one more question. As dream researchers, how do you feel about the field of dream research? Would you recommend this to other people? Do you think this is going to explode? Or is it kind of hard? Do you feel people don't take dreams very seriously? What do you think?
I think it's amazing and exciting. It feels like more people are getting interested in dreaming. Even in just the general sleep field, more people are starting to incorporate dreaming into their studies. And I would strongly encourage any students or anyone who's interested in starting to look at dreaming scientifically. I think it's a growing field.
Yeah, I think that there was a boom of it when REM sleep was first discovered, and then there was kind of a dark period for a while. But I think that with so many new methods like machine learning and decoding of stuff, I think that dream research is having a big comeback along with the rest of sleep research.
And it's also a lot of fun. So fantastic. I think that's a really great place to stop. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Nice to talk with you, Penny.
Yeah, really great talking to you guys. That was a lot of fun. You've been listening to the Sleep Science Podcast with me, Penny Lewis. My guests today were Karen Konkoly of Northwestern University and Michelle Carr of Rochester University. You can find more information about the guests, the podcast, and our sleep research at Cardiff on the podcast webpage. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing to the podcast or liking us on Twitter. If you have questions or comments, please get in touch via sleepsciencepodcast, or one word, @gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, sleep well. The Sleep Science Podcast is a production of the NAPS Sleep Lab at Cardiff University. Our producer today was Dominic Carr.